We love the madness though, right? We love it.
Oh, we embrace it. We eat it for breakfast.
Yeah, I'd rather have a bowl of Cocoa Pops, but if I can't have Cocoa Pops, I'll choose madness. Hello and welcome to Spotlight Indie. I'm Frasier Armitage, part-time robot, full-time nerd, and joining me as always is my co-host HL Tinsley. How are you doing, Holly?
Hello, I am doing excellent. Thank you very much, Frasier. I am happy to report that I have messed up the start of this video because I can't think of anything interesting to say. Please continue.
Have you had a good week?
I have had a good week, actually, strangely enough, because the world seems to be on fire at the moment.
How has your week been, Alex?
It's felt like it's gone by pretty quick, but it's been good. Just tapping away with my sassy dinosaurs. So, just plugging away in the background.
We didn't actually mention the fact in the last video that we just recorded just 5 minutes ago that Alex is actually on the team this year. So I feel like we need to welcome Alex officially to Spotlight Indie as our newest sacrifice. I don't know what the word is.
I am slightly more apprehensive about joining the team now, but I am still excited.
Welcome, Alex. Welcome to the Spotlight Indie crew.
Oh, thank you. I am excited to be part of the team. I mean, the event that Team Tinsley put on last year was amazing. So it's really exciting to help bring, the next one to life.
What are you looking forward to about this sort of like this period of building the Spotlight Indie and, getting things ready for the event that is going to be happening next year? Are you guys like particularly looking forward to things in the weeks ahead, Alex and Holly?
I'm excited about a lot of things. To be honest, I'm excited about the fact that everyone else is doing all the work for me at the moment, which is really nice. So, we have the website being built. We have Frasier doing a great job with setting up these recordings. We have our new web person, Amber, who has come on board, who is staying behind the scenes, but is doing incredible work on all our images and logos. So, yeah, I'm just kind of sat there enjoying the peace, the calm before the storm, before we start looking into actual physical event for next year, Frasier. And then it's all going to kick off again. It'll be madness.
We love the madness though, right? We love it.
Oh, we embrace it. We eat it for breakfast.
Yeah, I'd rather have a bowl of Cocoa Pops, but if I can't have Cocoa Pops, I'll choose madness.
You want a bowl of sheer stress, Frasier. That's what you want.
Absolutely. Who doesn't want to wake up in the morning stressed? I mean, how boring would that be? Alex, what about you? Is there something that you're particularly looking forward to about next year's event or about the Spotlight Indie sort of, getting there?
I think it's good. I'm looking forward to the stress, so that's good. But I think you're just, building the connections with everybody in the community around the event as well. That's one of the things I love about the sort of fantasy SFF community in general, is that it's a really sort of friendly place. Everybody, we're just there to be fans of the same stuff, and we all love the same things. So I'm just, excited to bring that sort of forward, as with part of these videos and throughout the year, as well as the event itself. It was such a friendly space to just chat with everybody. So I'm, looking forward to meeting new friends along the way. That's the true treasure, right? The friends we made along the way, and also the event at the end.
Do you remember sort of some of the questions that you used to have when you were starting out? Because obviously we're going to, in this segment of this video, we're particularly focusing on questions from our audience. Maybe some who are starting out, maybe some who've been writing for a long time and want to get your views on things. But do you remember having questions when you were starting out?
Oh, so many questions. I do. And the event that we attended, that Holly put on last year, the Spotlight, we had a panel that I was moderating for about, how to get started in writing. And some of those questions were, a reminder of the same kind of things that I was looking at. Like, how much of a plan do I have to have before I start writing? And obviously the answer is we don't have to have any plan if you don't want to. And it's just, I think, a good reminder as well, like seeing those questions and answering those questions for people, that the questions don't change, and you just don't, there's no like true path or anything, but as long as you're writing and happy about it, you should, as much as you can be, it's all good. So I think, it's nice to see those questions crop up. But like, do you have to have a plan? Like, am I allowed to do this? you know, all those kind of things. I think it's a lot of it's just about permission. So, you know, that's what we're here for. I won't give permission as regally as Hollywood, but you have mine.
Perfect. What about you, Holly? Were you riddled with questions at the start of your writing journey?
I mean, I was definitely riddled with questions, but I didn't have anyone to ask these questions to, so I didn't know that there was a writing community. I assumed that all authors lived in castles and wrote books on a typewriter. And then I put a book out and realized that the reality is very different, and that there are all sorts of people out there writing books of varying genres and levels of experience and styles. So I think what the biggest takeaway from me over the last couple of years is that we say, you know, do you have questions about the writing process? And automatically we start talking about, you know, new writers and debut writers. You know, I've been doing this for 5 years. I still haven't got a clue what I'm doing. I still have tons of questions. You know, there's things I've picked up along the way. There's things I've learned, and I am better as a writer for the things that I have learned over the last 5 years. But it still stresses me out. I still get that anxiety when I walk into a room full of authors and they're talking about something, and I just think, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And it feels really embarrassing to ask, you know, especially if you've been around for a while or you're somebody that is actively involved in the community. And there is no reason why it should, because we all have questions for the entirety that we are on this journey, because it changes constantly.
Yeah, I kind of found that the questions that I ask now are very different to the questions that I had at the beginning, but you never stop asking questions. And there's never that, I think the minute you stop sort of with that desire to learn, the minute your writing stagnates, because I think that we grow as writers the more that we learn, but that means the more that you learn, quite often the more there is to find out. So it's a really interesting sort of thing that we get this opportunity to be able to, as writers, talk about some of these questions that you've been having, as you know, the people who are tuning into this, and in the sense of building that sense of community, like Alex is looking forward to. That's what we want to do with this. We want to get your questions, and don't feel as though there is any such thing as a stupid question. We will take them all very seriously. So if you have a question about writing, whether you've been doing it for a long time or you're just starting out, send it to us, and then we'll be able to feature them on this segment. Holly, what's our question for this week?
This week, we are going to be talking about book comps. So we had a question which was about book comps. What are they? How are they used? Where would they be used and why? Just to cover off what they are, essentially, book comps are used as a marketing tool or as a tool for pitching your book to potential readers or publishers, where you will compare it against similar titles that are in the market. So you would say it's Pride and Prejudice meets Survivor Season 10. Just, you know, off the top of my head example, don't use that one. It's probably not the best. But yeah,
I want to read it though. That's the thing.
Oh, I know. Don't you just? But Frasier, before you derail me any further with thoughts of Pride and Prejudice meets Survivor, let's just talk a little bit about book comps then. Have you guys used them? Alex, do you use them in your book?
I have not. I think a lot of the way they can be used, or is in like pitching to agents and things like that. So this is the indie space where we're sort of self-publishing, publishing ourselves. So I haven't used them. Because I'm not trying to sort of pitch to an agent to say, oh, this book is like Pride and Prejudice meets Survivor, or, you know, or Lost, or whatever it might be. But I know that some people do. A lot of people have those at the top of their like blurbs on Amazon and stuff. They might say, yeah, that it is X meets Y. But yeah, I think for me, I struggle a little bit because I want to make sure that the themes are right for those books as well. Like I've picked up a few things based on comps and they haven't quite hit what I was expecting. I don't mind that because I'm always happy to give something a go, but I think I'm just a bit wary of them a little bit, that I don't want somebody to pick up one of my books thinking it's going to be X, and then it turns out to be what it is. Like my Windborn, the first book, is my short pitch was a Viking superhero revenge story, but I'm a little bit wary of sort of making too many comps to superheroes because it's quite an sort of an introspective book and there are, you know, super powered fights in there, but it's not like a Marvel movie in terms of like, you know, it's not sort of, it can be a little bit slower in the pacing. So I wouldn't want to comp it to a Marvel movie and then have somebody pick it up and be disappointed. So to answer your question, no, I haven't used any comps. How about you guys?
All I've got going through my head, totally honest with you, is what have you there, Mr. Darcy? I do believe I have fashioned a rudimentary lathe, Miss Bennet. Call it a rudimentary lathe, Mr. Darcy. You have never seen a lathe in your life. Like, that is honestly...
Okay, we've lost
Fraser. I need to read this book. I need it in my life. Comp titles for me, instantly, I guess they... the danger with them for me is that they, like you say, Alex, they produce an image in your head, right? So you instantly hear of a comp title and you think, oh, it's going to be like this because it's something you can picture. It's something that, and that's great. If you can imagine a book before you've read it, it's brilliant because it gives you a taste, it gives you a flavor. The danger, though, is that, you know, you put people off because it's a flavor that they don't really want or they don't really need, or that you sort of missell your book in that way. So comp titles that I use are generally comp titles to movies rather than to books, because I feel like people can get a better vibe of an overall thing if it's a movie, because it's so much easier for them to digest the tone and the style and the type of plot that it is, because you have so much less to work with in 90 minutes to 2 hours than you do in 100,000 words. Because a book is so dense with different aspects that I just find it easier to comp to other things. So like you say, Alex, about comping to a Marvel movie, that's great, but you're comping to a very specific type of thing. Whereas if you can comp to something that's a bit more general, but also kind of popular, that's probably where I would go. So my first book, New Yesterday, I comped it to like Memento meets Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And it's not really either of those things, but if you kind of blended them together, you'd get a kind of sense of what it's about, really. But it's also a little bit of Minority Report thrown in there. So those were like my comp titles, really. What about you, Holly? Have you used them before?
So I think actually just from the answers that you guys have given there, that kind of pulls a few different threads that I wanted to pick up on during this conversation. One is what do we use for comps? So Frasier, you've mentioned they're using movies. So comps that I've used before, I've used video game franchises, TV shows, films, books. I think what's really important to distinguish is where the comp is coming from and what it's being used for. So some comps, as Alex mentioned, are for pitches. So those would be the comps that you put out to editors or to publishers to try and define where your book is going to sit in the market. So, if you were to walk into Barnes & Noble, where would it sit on the shelf and who would it be between? The other side of that is you've got your comps, which are for your readers, which is more to set the tone, the style, what they can expect from the book. Now, what I think is a clever way to do it is to completely cheat and have all of your readers do your comps for you. So when I released my first book, I didn't compare it to anything. I mentioned the inspirations that I'd had. So I think I talked about the fact that it was inspired by Assassin's Creed, because that's like my favorite video game franchise, and, authors that I'd read that had inspired me. But the actual comps themselves, so I got a lot of Peaky Blinders, I got a lot of that, Gangs of New York, different authors and things. And that all came from readers rather than from me deciding that I was going to say this is what it is. So I think that can be a good way to do it, especially if you are going out to, beta teams, alpha teams, get that feedback from them and say, where does this sit for you?
Yeah, I think that's great. What about you, Alex? Have you had other people comparing your work to other different things?
A little bit, yeah. I say I've had a few, or at least a couple of sort of comments about more like X-Men than sort of Marvel, which I think is actually fairly, that makes sense to me. Like, having said, Marvel can be sort of just those sort of popcorn action-y type things. I think X-Men can be a bit more, have a bit more meat to the themes. Not saying that Marvel don't. But I think it's interesting what you were both saying there about picking different kind of media to compare to. As you're saying, Frasier, you can do. It's more likely as well to, like, if you pick a movie, a lot more people are likely to have read, or seen that movie rather than read the book that you happen to be comping off of. And the tones are easier to just see at a glance or digest, and with same with video games, I think, as well. So yes, not a huge amount of comps in my reviews I've noticed, but I also think it's a great idea to ask beta readers and early readers to suggest those to you, and I will be stealing that idea.
Another idea that I'd like to throw in the pot is that I am terrible at marketing. It's not my strongest suit at all. But I am part of the Fanfi Addict blog, so that means that I have the privilege of reviewing a lot of books. And in writing reviews of books that you love, you can quite often liken those books to other things. So one thing that's helped me with my comp titles is when I've tried to use them for other books that I'm reviewing. So a really useful exercise is to think of a book that you love, and then think about the different aspects of it that relate to other things that you love. Put those things together. And when you get into the practice of doing that, you'll find that it's much easier to do it for your own work. Because otherwise you can kind of sit there thinking, but there's so many movies and there's so many different types of media that are like this. Where do I start? But if you start doing it with other things that you love, you'll quite often find that there is a formula that kind of just clicks in your brain that goes, oh, okay, yeah, no, I know how to do this. And then it makes it easier when it's your own work.
I think there's a sort of a similar, I say system, but if you go on Amazon, so when you look to see how books are marketed on there, so there's all the algorithms and things that are doing what they do. And when you click on a certain book, it's going to bring up, oh, if you like this title, then you're probably going to like X, Y, and Z. And one of the things you can do is sort of go down a rabbit hole of, if you look for a comparative title to your book, it will then take you to what is the next comparative title to that, and what is the next comparative title to that. And while I'm not saying that you should go, okay, yeah, I'll compare all my books to these ones, it will give you an idea of what the people who are looking in that genre and that market are buying, and also what Amazon is pushing as well. So, it's not a foolproof system, because as we all know, algorithms aren't foolproof. I mean, I pulled up my book the other day and it said that people who bought my book also bought microwaves. So, doesn't work for everyone, but it is a good way to see what is sitting within that kind of category and what is sitting within that genre that you're trying to get into.
So you think you don't microwave your books?
I mean, maybe I should. Maybe this is where I'm going wrong.
It's like, when you get warm socks off the radiator, just freshly microwave book, it makes it so much nicer. If I could just go back to what Ollie was saying, not about the microwaves, but as a way to you've got the also, people were also looking at this book on Amazon, but Amazon also breaks down, it can have quite granular categories for the books. So if that's something that you want to look at of, different books that are in the same kind of genre, or that the people might be looking at, you can go quite small with that sort of thing. So if you are looking at your books or books that you think might be a good comp, that could be another way to find that out.
Yeah, I feel as well like it will help you to understand to a better degree that your book is like other bigger books that are out there. Because for me as an indie author who also feels imposter syndrome quite heavily, I'm reluctant to compare my books to massive titles, because I think, well, my books, I could never write in the same league as this writer. Not to say that my book isn't as good, but it's just you feel the imposter syndrome, it kind of holds you back from doing that. A publishing house is going to comp to the biggest titles ever, but we're, as indie authors, we are in that market, so we shouldn't feel bad about comping to big titles, or feeling like, oh no, it's not quite like this big massive thing, so I'd rather not mention it. It's no, just if you've got a comp title that fits with something big, dream big and use it.
I think that's the thing, that your last point there especially is a key thing to remember with all of that, is that I worry if I look at the back of a big published title that they're really pushing, that if they've said, oh, it's like, I don't know, Court of Thorn and Roses meets Indiana Jones, then I'm worrying they're just picking massive things that are really popular because they just want you to be like, oh, it's like this, and I have bought this yesterday, so I'm going to buy this. So as you say, as long as it matches, don't be afraid to do that, but also don't go too far the other way and just pick whatever happens to be the number one bestseller on the Times or something that week.
Yeah, because the thing about the indie experience is that you are building a readership for all of your books, because that's how it works as an indie. You know, you can't just have one very, 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 very successful book and that's it. You've made it. You have to find readers over time, which means that you need to keep readers. So the importance on comp titles, I think, for indies is it's crucial, because what the people read, if it matches the idea that they've had of that book, then they are much more likely to trust your next comp title and your next comp title. Whereas if they feel like they've been missold, you could be putting a spanner in the works of your own career as an indie writer. So you do have to have that caution. But if it fits, wear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, this goes back to what we were saying before about really making that distinction between who is your comp for. Is it for a publisher or is it for a reader? Because as Alex has rightly pointed out, the wonderful thing about indie is that there are all these tiny granular subgenres that we can all get into. And, you know, it does make it harder to market, because if you are in a niche genre, as many of us are, there are less books or films or franchises that you can comp to. But on the flip side is if you're out there writing a book about, I don't know, cozy fantasies set on Mars in a Western saloon, and you go and you find the market and there is other books out there which are cozy fantasies set in Mars, that is a readership right there. And you know that those are the people who are going to want that book. So comp to that, you know, go into that genre and say, this is the sphere I'm in, this is the circle I'm in. There's no point comparing yourself to Abercrombie or Sanderson or Pratchett if your book doesn't have the kind of the width of genre to encompass those. If you're niche, go niche. Go niche or go home. That's my advice.
If you're Mr. Darcy and you've made a scythe, don't make it out to be a rudimentary lathe.
Yeah, exactly.
And Darcy lathes aside, I think the joy of indie is, and self-published books, is that you can, you know, and being an author and a reader, is that you can find those books that are a bit more niche and, you know, and more specific, that publishers won't pick up, because the publishers need to make lots of money on their books because they spend lots of money to buy them. So yeah, have a look at those granular comps. I was just watching a YouTube video with Stephen Arian. He's recently self-published a novella, and he was, I think, doing more of that, and he was kind of saying in the video that he's sort of stepping back from YouTube, but now he's dipped his toe into self-publishing. He's got more ideas that a publisher wouldn't pick up. So as you say, lean into that and make those comps where people want the weird and wonderful stuff. They don't just want the massive things that hit all the tropes. They want things that do interesting things. They want stories that twist.
And quite often, those more interesting, weirder kind of stories are harder to blurb. So, and it's much harder to get across in a short period of time what it actually is. So that's true of Time's Ellipse. I found it really hard to write a blurb for that book that actually matched what the story was. But if I was to say to you, it's like the Martian Chronicles crossed with Interstellar, you don't have to have a blurb. If you like those things, you'll enjoy the book. So it almost gives you a cheat code of being able to get around the weird and the wonderful, because it just condenses it into an immediate thing that people can picture. So, you know, if you are leaning into the weird and the wonderful, leaning into comp titles can really help you with your marketing as well.
Yeah, definitely. Interestingly though, Frasier, I like the way that you just worded that. If you like this, you might like this, because I think one of the things that you can do with book comps is that you can change the way that you pitch the comp itself. So you can change the wording of it, you can change the presentation of it. So I think people get worried about if they say it's, you know, this meets this, then people are going to expect that it is pretty much going to be just an alternative version of something that they've already seen. Whereas if you say, if you like this, you might like this, or it has the flavour of Captain Scarlet, then that's different, because that is then describing tone, it's describing the feeling of the book. So where do you guys sit on that? Is there different ways to comp maybe?
Dum, dum,
Yeah,
dum, 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 dum. Sorry, I had to. It's the law.
That was very interesting as you were saying that, of the different ways to comp, because you could say it's, you know, if you like this, then you will, this is, but you want a bit more, I don't know, like having now said the Times bestseller list, like if you like Pride and Prejudice and the Martian Chronicles, but you want a dash of Hairy Bikers, then this is for you. you know, it maybe lends itself to more of like a longer like marketing material. Like it's not just like one line at the top of the blurb where you're grabbing people's attention, but maybe more like, I don't know, an Instagram post that you're making. So I think there's certainly room in the grand world of marketing where you can probably mix and match and try different ways to comp things.
What I've seen an awful lot of recently is things like, this is for fans of, which is something that has been coming through a lot from a lot of publicists on some of the books from publishers that come through. It's a great way of being able to pitch it to a group, as opposed to pitching it to everybody. You're just pitching it to that group of people. So, which again ties into what Holly was saying about knowing who it's for. Because if you've written a book that is for fans of Star Trek, that's going to appeal to such a wide sort of thing. But if you've written a book that's for fans of Firefly, it's two very different things, So you might think that's the same, but the people who enjoy Star Trek might be very different to the people who enjoy Firefly, because they've got different vibes about them. So don't just feel like you've got to find the right comps, but you are allowed to say like this won't appeal to people who sort of like this, but it will appeal to the people who like this group, and sometimes making that smaller is kind of better.
And I think, it's sort of pulling a thing you said, Holly, earlier, and then saying for fans of the Frasier, is that we've been talking a lot about actual like films or games or books or whatever, but Holly, you mentioned like for fans of Abercrombie. So like for fans of, you can pick an author as well and say, for fans of Abercrombie and somebody else. And then, you can kind of, maybe you're sitting in a little bit of a middle of that, or you've hit a lot of the same tone that Abercrombie has. Then, you don't just have to comp with book titles. You can comp with authors.
There's just loads. There's no rules for comping. It's just a case of finding the most accurate match that is gonna appeal to the right readers for your book, because every book has its right readership. This is just a way for you to reach those readers.
Yeah.
And I think talking about about marketing itself, like using these for marketing, is that you could try several and just maybe this week you're trying to comp it, or you think this is a good comp and actually that one doesn't gain much traction, and then next week you lean into somebody else. So I think it's good to try different things and not be afraid to try different things, or just shut something down and say, okay, well, I tried that one, didn't work.
Just want to kind of wrap up this with a little bit just on the marketing side of it. So obviously it's very different if you're looking to go down the traditional publishing route, which obviously some people who are watching this may be looking to do. If that's the case, then what I would suggest is a lot of the agents, the publishing houses, they will quite often do workshops, or they will do Ask an Agent. I know there are several who do them quite regularly. So I would just follow them, keep an eye out when they do it, and they will often talk about what they're looking for, how to do pitches, how to do comps. So that is worth keeping an eye out. On the indie side of it, however, I do think it's a really good opportunity to be really creative. So when you're talking about comps, don't just think in terms of, I'm going to put a comp on the back of my book. Really lean into it. Use Venn diagrams, do percentages. This Venn diagram, my book is 20% hairy bikers, 15% silent witness, 10% legends and lattes. Just have fun with it and be creative and see what sticks with your audience, because it's going to get you engagement when you hit on the right notes.
So you basically saying that the main character in your book has gone out for a meal to a very cozy cafe, witnessed a death, and is now thinking about the recipe that could have killed them.
Yes, that is exactly what it is. And I definitely didn't forget the first thing that I said. But the point is, have fun, be creative.
I love the Venn diagram idea as well. That's like quite a nice way to pull those different elements together in a very visual way, which a lot of marketing is. And I may, if you see any Venn diagrams from me in the near future, this is where it started.
And if you're going to make like a video about your book, make the comparison with the kind of things that you fill it with. So if a certain type of media has a certain type of vibe, pick that for the music that you put into the video, pick that for the visuals. Don't say that, oh, okay, this is like this, and then put together a trailer that's nothing like those things. Make sure that your comparison filters through into your other marketing material as well. So if you're going to use the comparison technique. Just make sure that that is consistent throughout the way that you market, because otherwise you might really confuse people if you put together like a really cozy trailer for something you've compared to, like, you know, Game of Thrones meets The Exorcist. It's like it would be really confusing, right? So just keep consistency, and that'll work for your marketing as well.
Cool.
So I think that's the answer to our question, hopefully. And thank you so much to the person who has submitted that question. Keep your questions coming in. Hopefully what you've seen from this is that we do take these questions very seriously. So anything that is on your mind writing wise, send it in. Alex, thank you for your input and for your advice and for your insights.
Thank you for having me and listening to me witter on about the answers. Hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, it was
if
very
nothing
helpful.
else, we've got some good ideas for some new titles now, mainly featuring the hairy Vikers.
And the Mr. Darcy lathe, I think, as well.
I am so in a scene right now in my head. I can't even tell you. By the time the next video comes next week, I am going to have mapped out an entire book. It's amazing.
Just do the Mr. Darcy voice one last time.
I'll tell you what, I'll do the outro as Mr. Darcy. So
stellar.
So thank you, Alex, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And so do all of our listeners and viewers. What we will do next time is we will be speaking with Alex, because he's joining us again next week to talk about some good news. So see us then.
I wasn't good enough to be fed this week.
Oh, Mr. Bond. Listen, Miss Bennett. I'm tired of your type.
Oh my God. Right, Frasier's gone. That's it. We've lost him.
Mr. Darcy.
Right.